So how do you ship new features as fast as humanly possible without, breaking everything? It is the core challenge for just about every tech company out there. In this explainer, we're going to look at two wildly different companies, Evernote and the Home Depot, and see how they both found the answer in the same three little letters, SLO. Okay, so this is probably a scene that looks really familiar to a lot of you, right? It's this classic tug of war. On one side, you've got your development team. Their whole goal, ship awesome new features and ship them fast. But then on the other side, you have the operations team, and their job is to keep everything stable, to keep the lights on. So what happens? Dev feels like they're being held back, and ops feels like they're just putting out fires all day long. Evernote put it perfectly. They called it a frustrated and strained relationship. So, how do you get these two teams to stop pulling in opposite directions and start actually rowing together? Well, you give them a common language. And that's where service level objectives, or SLOs, come into the picture. They're not just some technical tool, they're really a framework for collaboration. At its heart, an SLO is just an agreement. That's it. It's a specific, measurable target for how reliable a service should be, but, and this is key, from the user's perspective. So instead of arguing about whether the site feels slow or seems kind of buggy, teams agree on a number, a real target for uptime or for speed or for the error rate. It becomes a shared goal that's based on cold, hard data. This quote from Evernote, I think it just nails the true superpower of SLOs. It completely transforms the conversation. So instead of arguing about feelings like, we're pushing way too many buggy releases, teams can just look at the data and say, okay, we've used up 75% of our error budget for the month. Now, this budget is just the acceptable amount of downtime or errors you've all agreed on ahead of time. It replaces all that subjective opinion with objective facts, which lets everyone make smarter decisions together. So let's see how this actually plays out in the real world. We'll start with our first case study, Evernote. They took a really iterative, kind of ground-up approach to solving this tension between their dev and ops teams. Their whole philosophy was simple. Just get started. So this was the scene at Evernote. I mean, we're talking about a company with 220 million users. The friction between shipping cool new stuff and keeping the service stable, it was becoming a huge problem. They just knew they needed a better way to balance these competing priorities. So instead of trying to boil the ocean, they started with one single question. What's the most important promise we make to our users? And the answer was pretty simple. The service just needs to be there when they need it. So they defined a super basic uptime SLO, found an easy way to measure it, and just got going. No complex instrumentation, no crazy months-long project, just a clear, customer-focused goal. Their guiding philosophy was this: perfect is the enemy of good. They knew their very first SLO wasn't going to measure every single user interaction perfectly. Of course not. But you know what? It was good enough to start having those data-driven conversations. And this focus on making immediate progress is what helped them avoid getting totally stuck in analysis paralysis. And the impact was obvious. By having this common measure of success, all the human interpretation and the subjectivity, it just got removed from the equation. So when a complex bug needed a bunch of risky releases, they could use the SLO to actually quantify the impact on the customer and make a decision together, based on data. It actually helped them cut the number of releases from 5 down to 2. The relationship got better because now they were finally on the same team, working toward the exact same goal. All right, now let's completely pivot to a different story. If Evernote's approach was this kind of grassroots effort, what the Home Depot did was a full-blown cultural revolution, driven from the top down. They didn't just start simple, they decided to go big. For the Home Depot, the catalyst was a massive architectural shift. They were moving away from these big, clunky, monolithic software systems to a microservices architecture. All of a sudden, they had hundreds of small, independent teams, and all their services were interconnected. They desperately needed a way to create a common language for reliability and accountability across this new, incredibly complex landscape. They tackled this with a really structured 4-part strategy. First, define a common language. Then, evangelize it like crazy. We're talking training, roadshows, even t-shirts. Third, build automation to make it super easy for people to adopt. And finally, this is the critical part, they created an incentive. They actually tied SLO adoption to the annual goals for their managers. This wasn't a suggestion, it was a deliberate campaign to change the company's entire culture. And to create that common vernacular, they came up with this simple, catchy acronym, VELAY. It was brilliant. It boiled down all these core concepts of reliability into 5 simple questions that literally anyone, from a senior exec to a brand new developer, could understand. This Valet framework became the shared language for reliability across the whole organization. And how effective was this strategy? Well, the results kind of speak for themselves. They went from basically 0 services with defined SLOs to over 800 in less than a year. That combination of a simple framework, powerful evangelism, and really clear incentives just created this tidal wave of adoption. So let's put these 2 stories side by side for a second. What we have here are 2 very different companies with 2 very different approaches, but they were both chasing the exact same goal: reliability. The contrast is pretty stark, right? Evernote's path was organic, it was partnership-driven, and it was focused on getting something good enough out the door so they could iterate. Home Depot's was this deliberate, top-down cultural transformation focused on scaling fast through evangelism and automation. You could say one was a quiet evolution, the other a loud revolution. And here's the real key takeaway. Both paths worked. There is no one-size-fits-all playbook for reliability. The power of SLOs is really in their adaptability. Those core principles, creating a shared, data-driven understanding of what good actually looks like, they can be tailored to fit any organization's size, its culture, and its unique challenges. So whether you start small and iterate like Evernote did, or you decide to go big and drive cultural change like Home Depot, the goal is the same. You want to build a common language that turns conflict into collaboration. So the real question this leaves us with is, what does your organization need, and where will your journey begin?